think large-scale agriculture has a very poor record in terms of either providing jobs or livelihood opportunities. It's likely to reduce livelihood opportunities of the people who are being dispossessed. It has a very poor record of providing new jobs. And the arguments for it in terms of producing large quantities of food, I don't think we have much evidence that food is actually in short supply, right? There's enough food. The question is its distribution. So if you rob people of their livelihoods and you don't give them jobs, their access to food is going to decrease. No matter how much food is being produced, they're not going to have access to it, right? So because I see the issue as primarily being one of distribution rather than production, I can't really see any benefit from it. Well, my concrete research locally at the moment is on oil palm in Indonesia, which is massively expanding. It's already more than 10 million hectares, supposed to go up to more than 20 million if the government has its way. And what I've been trying to do in ethnography, together with Indonesian colleagues, of really looking at what form of life exists in and around these large plantations, right? Or more than 10 million hectares, it's at least more than 10 million people whose lives are radically transformed by the arrival of these massive monocrop plantations. And frankly, it's bad news. It's producing a very lawless environment of extortion, corruption, dispossession. It's not a happy story, what goes on around this large-scale agriculture. And I think the interesting question is why in some cases the local people nevertheless accept the plantations or in fact invite them in, and I've been trying to understand, well, why would they do that if in fact it seems to be so damaging to them? And the reason is that they feel seriously abandoned by the government in the sense of infrastructure provision. So these are people in upriver, remote areas. They feel, here we are 60 years after independence, they still don't have a road, they still don't have a proper primary school, no teachers will stay in the village because there's no road. So they feel very abandoned and left out. And because the government has shown no signs and is showing no signs of providing what they consider to be normal, decent, basic village infrastructure, they feel, well, the company's saying they're going to build a road, and we're very angry that we're going to have to give up 80% of our land in order to have this infrastructure, but how else will we ever get a road? How else will we ever have a school, and so on? So I think they're sort of driven into accepting or inviting in these large plantations and so on, kind of under duress, right? Because the government is not doing its job, and so it's more or less driving them into the arms of the companies. And then, frankly, the results are often disappointing. The companies don't do what they promise, right? The roads are of poor quality, or they only really serve the plantation. They don't serve the surrounding population very well. So the deals often look, in the end, rather sour from a local point of view. I think the ways in which local populations have benefited from oil palm in particular is not from the large plantations, it's from the smallholder sector. So we've been looking also at smallholder oil palm linked to a centrally run factory. And when smallholders are given proper support, decent seedlings, access to fertilizer and so on, they're actually more productive than the plantations. A big challenge is just the diversity of conditions, right? Every national context has a rather different dynamic going on. And so on the one hand, while it's interesting to kind of all come together under one umbrella to debate these issues, there is still a huge range of what's actually going on in the field. And therefore, I think also the points of leverage and the kinds of social movement strategies and so on are also quite diverse, right? What will work in one context, what will work in another, and so on. So I think those are challenges, but nevertheless, I do think the attempt to, despite differences, try to understand this as a large-scale, fairly widespread phenomenon is very productive.
Great, thank you so much.